Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Plechner, and for my Documenting South Jersey internship, I decided to take a look at the Rebecca Estell Bourgeois Collection. Rebecca Estell was the first female mayor in the state of New Jersey and came from a long line of Estells that owned a lot of property in the state of New Jersey, specifically South Jersey. But what's in the collection? The collection is a series of land documents, land grants, business correspondence, receipts, letters, maps, and legal papers, roughly from about 1800 to the 1920s. I decided to take a look at the land grants specifically because the land grants had me interested. I was interested to see in how they measured out plots of land back then. I mean, there was no measuring tapes or rulers. How did they figure out how much land belonged to who? So I decided to take a look at some of these land grants. Now, when you first look at the land grants, they look a little intense. When you try to read them, the cursive is so tightly packed together that it's really hard to decipher without a close eye. And when you start to look at the mechanics that they used to decipher what whose land was who, it was really strange. I mean, how could you decide that the top of the hill was where the land ended? The top of the hill to me and to you is completely different. Some of the land grants also had interesting and quirky measuring techniques, such as the pine stump marked with an A, the stake in the middle of the road, or the grapevine. Do these measuring techniques stand the test of time? I have no idea, and frankly, I was kind of overwhelmed when looking at these documents. Luckily for both of us, I know just the person I can talk to about land grants. I got in contact with Mr. Paul Schopp, and we had a little conversation about some of the land grants and measuring mechanics that they used back in the day. Take it away, future Nicole. So, my first question for you is, what was the standard measuring system used in land grants in New Jersey in the early 1800s?
The standard measuring system used in land transactions in New Jersey in the early 1800s included the Gunter chain invented by Edmund Gunter in 1620. He was a British mathematician and clergyman, and that really served as the normal way of measuring. It was 66 feet long, consisting of 100 links, and each link was 7.92 inches. So you'll see it references to chains and links, and that's how you determine the measurement. There were other measurements used that were also involved the Gunter chain, things like rods and roods and perches. And all of these measurement terms have their origins, but they all can relate to the Gunter chain, which standardized land measurement. Prior to that, the British used a system based on the number four, so quarter acre, that type of thing. And an acre originally started out as just a field, and a furlong or a furrow was how much they could plow in a day. Yeah, very obtuse references. And the rod comes from the rod that the uh, cow and oxen drivers would carry to prod the animals along. So, but yeah, the Gunter chain served as the standard measuring tool, along with uh, the surveyor's compass, and later on the theodolite. They had various tools for measuring distances. So
So, why do some land grants, such as the one here, mention the white oak or the grapevine as a point of measurement?
yeah, generally what they would do is they would identify something that was unusual within that property to be surveyed. So there might be an oak stump, there might be a pine stump. Um, and while, as you suggest, it might be temporary in existence, I can relate to you a story. Years ago, I went on a safari to find reference points for some land down in Camden County, Laurel Springs, Stratford area. And the one reference was to if I recall correctly, a white oak. And we're looking all around, and all of a sudden, I almost trip over this tree stump, and it was a white oak tree stump. And here it has survived all those generations. So, while you may think that they would be temporary, at least for a while, they're fairly permanent, particularly if they remain in the wild.
Did the quality of the land grant and the measuring system coincide? If a land grant was of low quality, was it more likely to have strange landmarks listed?
No, no. The surveyor's job was to survey the land regardless of its quality. You had everything from what was called cripples or broken land that comes from the Dutch kroepel, which means broken land. And um, yeah, it really didn't matter what kind of land it was. If it had to be surveyed, the surveyors would go out and survey it, and they would find the best landmarks that they could find. I remember looking at a survey many years ago where they stopped for the day, and the next day they in the field notes it said, beginning at the rock we found along the side of the road. So it's it's some of the vagaries of surveying.
Did you notice anything peculiar about either of the land grants that I had listed as the ones that I wanted to go over?
I didn't find anything real unusual about them. And in the one where it's only a half interest, that
Mhm.
half interest is known as a moiety. And the owner had already received the other half interest from another seller. So I did notice that. But as far as the land itself goes, the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich people have money, wealthy people have land. And so these folks were buying up great swaths of land across southern New Jersey and just for the idea of having it.
One of the documents lists Turkey Hoe as a town name, so we know that we have Tuckahoe,
Right.
but there's no record of it ever being Turkey Hoe
No,
unless in
no,
only a couple of them. Was that like a
no.
strange spelling or a nickname, do you think, or was it just a strange
Well,
little...
of course, Tuckahoe or Turkey Hoe or Tucky Hoe is indigenous, and it is an aquatic plant that they would use as a food. And even when they sold uh, Penny's Island to Elizabeth Kinsey, they reserved the right to continue to harvest the Tuckahoe around the perimeter of the island. So yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile thing. I've seen Turkey Hill referenced in New York as well as in Maryland, and I think it might just be an issue of phonetic spelling, ear conditioning. But yeah, Tuckahoe's there. Tuckahoe's in Maryland, New York. I'm sure there's several other Tuckahoes around the East Coast. Of course, with deeds, a lot of the information in the deed is boilerplate. It's pretty much the same from deed to deed. They changed the meets and bounds, which is the measurement method used in South Jersey, still used today. It's not until you get out into eastern Ohio where you find a monument that the change occurs between meets and bounds to the national grid system, where everything is measured off of a grid. But a lot of the language in deeds is just boilerplate, and it all has meaning. There's a reason for it to be there. I remember listening to a lawyer several years ago go through a deed and talk about every phrase that was in it and why it was there, and I found it fascinating.
Yeah, it's so cool. It
Yeah,
is interesting that, like, while they are similar to each other, it's like they have some of it is different, some of it's the same, but it's like at the end of the day, I don't know. I just think it's so fascinating, some of these.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. To me, a deed is a fascinating document. I was just looking at some the other day for a black cemetery up in Chemung Township. Well, it's now Tabernacle, and uh, always fascinating to look at deeds and trace the title back, trace it forward. Yeah,
And it's interesting to think that while we may think that some of these pine stumps or grapevines or whatever it may be, like a stake in the road, while we
yeah,
think they might be temporary, that some of them do actually last
they
at least
do.
200 years.
They do. And when iron production, log iron production began in the Pine Barrens, they started to use the pigs that they cast in the furnace as survey markers, and you can still find them today, buried, hammered into the ground.
That's so neat.
If you think about it, many of the older monuments are stone, Well, there's no stone in South Jersey. It all had to be hauled in by wagon, horse and wagon, and set into place. And some of them are in size with the initials of the owner
Mhm.
or with a date. Yeah, it's fascinating. Maps and surveys and deeds, they all fascinate me.
Yeah, they're super neat. All right, I think that's all the questions that I have. Thank you for
Okay.
talking with me about this. I had a lot of fun discussing land surveying, land grants in general, and the land grants that I looked at specifically with Paul Schopp, the assistant director at the South Jersey History and Culture Center here at Stockton University. It's incredibly interesting to know that some of these mechanics that they used back in the day, such as the old pine stump to the stake in the road, and so on and so forth, that they still stand the test of time today, 200 years later. Some of these pine stumps, white grapevines, stakes in the road, so on, so forth, are still here, and they still act somewhat as landmarks when measuring out land and surveying. While it's great that the technology has updated, it's also interesting to know that, despite its updates, some of the stuff remains the same. I had a lot of fun researching these land grants and the Rebecca Estell Bourgeois Collection, and I'm glad that I took the time to kind of sit with the documents, decipher them, and read them, because to the untrained eye, they're intimidating and they're kind of scary. I'm glad that I took the time to sit down, look at them, and truly get to know why the pine stump, the oak stump, the white grapevine, and the stakes in the road are so important. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And check out the local land grants that you can, because sometimes even the most unseemly documents can be incredibly interesting. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.